Afternoon. I did get into um, this Fort Stewart shooting last night. Unfortunately, I didn't like the way that live stream came out, so I decided to redo it over. With that being said, let's get into it.
Know that person's identity that has not been shared publicly just yet. But this all comes after the Fort Stewart Air Base was locked down due to an active shooter situation that happened at 11:04 a.m. This took place at the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team, and we know law enforcement is there on the scene right now, Reed. We also know that there have been some casualties, but at this point, we're not sure how many. This is, I should mention, a huge investigation, a huge police presence there. We are seeing multiple agencies working together on this right now. FBI's Atlanta Savannah office is saying it is aware of the incident and it is now coordinating with Army Criminal Investigation Division for any assistance that may be needed. Georgia State Police saying they are the primary on this, saying this is an active scene and their agency is now assisting to secure the perimeter there. Also, we can tell you that ATF is saying that it is now assisting in the investigation. And according to an earlier social media post, when it comes to guidance to people who still are on the base, it said, lock down your facility immediately, stay inside, close and lock all windows and doors. Keep telephone lines open and report accountability to your leadership. We're also seeing a lot of political reaction to this incident this hour. Governor Brian Kemp just released a statement on X a couple moments ago saying, as we remain in close contact with law enforcement on the ground, Marty, the girls, and I are saddened by today's tragedy at Fort Stewart. We are keeping the victims, their families, and all those who answer the call to serve in our hearts and prayers, and we ask the Georgians everywhere to do the same. We also know that the president at this point, we don't know if he's been briefed about this or if he's aware of this incident, but we are, of course, keeping a close eye on Truth Social to see if he says anything about this ongoing and active situation there. Just to give you a bit of background, Reed, the Fort Stewart Air Base is a really big air base. It's in coastal Georgia in a place called Hinesville, Liberty County. That's about 40 miles southwest of Savannah. This is a huge military air base. It is, I believe, the biggest Army installation east of the Mississippi River, and that's likely why you're seeing such a huge response to this from so many different agencies. Again, the FBI, Georgia Police, and ATF all responding to this active shooter situation that's happening on the Fort Stewart Air Base. We know there have been casualties. At this point, we do not know how many. But again, I can tell you 4 people have been taken to a hospital, and law enforcement says they are aware of who the suspect, the shooter in the situation is.
And Chanel, just doing a deep dive on the people who live and work there at that base. I'm understanding there are thousands of soldiers, and really this is chilling to me to learn, and their families. When we see it, you see it, of course, we like to put the human story behind the headlines and lean on the expertise of our local journalists. Let's go now to coverage from WTOC in Savannah.
Hospital where people, those casualties that we were just talking about, those people, those 4 people have been taken. Shane, what can you tell
Please
us?
like, share, subscribe.
Yes, Memorial Hospital in Savannah is where any victims of this mass shooting will be treated. Memorial is the only level 1 trauma center in the area, though there is a hospital on base, Wynn Army Hospital at Fort Stewart. However, this again is the only level 1 trauma center, and it's the only where appropriate to treat gunshot victims. Now, again, we have confirmed with local law enforcement there are 4 casualties, and like Madeline explained earlier, we don't know whether that means fatalities or people that are seriously injured. And of course, a situation like this is always fluid, so that number could change over time. As far as we know, none of those victims have arrived here at Memorial yet, but when they do, we are expecting them to be airlifted, so they will likely arrive via helicopter. And on top of Memorial Hospital, near the entrance to the emergency room, is where that helipad is, and likely where any victims will be taken to be treated. Now, presumably, we are talking about gunshot victims, but we don't know specifically what the injuries of anybody that's expected to arrive here today are going to be. We are working off of really, really limited information at this time, so we are going to continue to try and gather those details, but we are going to be on the ground here at Memorial as long as we need to be to bring you that information. Now, we have heard reports that folks are on the way right now. Those are unconfirmed reports, but again, we are expecting them to potentially be airlifted in here to Memorial Hospital to be treated for their injuries. We know that that's going to be at least 4 people. We have confirmed that with area law enforcement, but that number could change or could be more. Hopefully it's not, but we are working to continue to learn more about this situation, and we'll continue to bring you updates as soon as they become available. All right, Shay, thank you. And we just want to get some new information out. Our producer just let us know in our ear moments ago that 5 people have been confirmed shot. That is confirmed by Fort Stewart. So now 5 people confirmed shot in this active shooting situation unfolding at Fort Stewart. Authorities have identified a shooting suspect. We don't have more details than that, but that is what we know. That's the latest information coming out right now.
And more new details. You see at the top of your screen there that Fort Stewart on lockdown. We also just got word, and if you have the WTOC News app, you saw this push alert to your smartphone as well. The lockdown has been lifted for schools on Fort Stewart. That is according to a DODEA alert. They say, quote, the lockout secure status for schools has been lifted. All schools, Diamond, Kessler, and Murray, are now in normal operations. School dismissal will be at normal time. Again, that's the Fort Stewart schools, not necessarily the base as a whole.
Yeah, the lockdown at Fort Stewart is still in place, so just the schools that have lifted their own lockdown. But again, the base says that a suspect has been identified. They're telling all personnel, they're still telling personnel on Fort Stewart, stay inside, close and lock all your windows and doors in whatever buildings you're in. So this lockdown very much is not over on Fort Stewart, still underway.
And we're hearing from the schools that are around that area as well. Ackling County schools telling us that they're aware of this situation. Of course, they're in that area, not necessarily in Hinesville, Ackling County, but near that area. And they tell us, quote, out of an abundance of caution and in alignment with our commitment to student and staff safety, that all Ackling County schools are currently in a level 1 lockdown. Now, that came to us just about 10 minutes ago. If you're tracking this article on WTLC.com, all the latest information will go right there. It's what I have up on our iPad here, because that truly is where we put all of that information as soon as it comes into the newsroom. And you just saw that Jay Schrader already at the hospital monitoring the situation there and bringing us live reports.
Yeah, but again, we want to get that new information. 5 people have been confirmed shot in this active shooter situation unfolding on Fort Stewart. We've been hearing reaction pouring in from state officials, the governor weighing in, releasing a statement, Representative Buddy Carter as well, saying that they are closely monitoring this situation, in close touch with authorities there. FBI Atlanta, we haven't said their statement yet, but they've also...
Look, they got everybody on this
their
thing.
Savannah office is aware of this situation happening at Fort Stewart right now. They're in coordination with Army Criminal
Why did this happen is what I want to know.
that may be needed here.
I want to know the
We will
why.
be closely following any more reaction pouring in, but again, this active shooter situation still unfolding right now on Fort Stewart.
More new information as well. The shooter has been apprehended. We are just now hearing that the active shooter on Fort Stewart has been apprehended. Also, that the lockdown has been lifted on the main part of the base. Obviously, a huge sigh of relief for folks out there.
Definitely. It's been a tense hour and a half since this started, and people on edge about this, I'm sure. I mean, they were telling people to stay inside and lock all their windows and doors, and this has been going on now for about an hour and a half on the base. So that is some good news that the shooter has been apprehended by authorities, and we're continuing to monitor this.
That's the power of working with our network of local journalists. That's from live reporting right now, WTOC in Savannah, as we watch this. So we've got that news as we bring in Anna Schechter, senior coordinating producer for our Crime and Public Safety Unit. 5 shot. We do not know what condition that they are in. Also sounds like, Anna, they've got that shooter apprehended, but One of my questions I have of many for you is these bases are not easy to get into.
Well, that's right. And, you know, we've seen these kinds of shootings at bases before. In fact, just 7 months ago at another Georgia base. So this is not unheard of. The number 5 soldiers shot. In fact, the Army base put that out. 5 soldiers were shot. So, you know, historically, the perpetrator has been generally somebody who was there, based there. This reminds me of the Fort Hood shooting in 2009, where we also had a high casualty count, even higher than the initial reports coming in here. But we learned today also the suspect was apprehended just a little over an hour ago at 11:35 a.m. So that lockdown doesn't lift until law enforcement has cleared the area. They want to make sure, one, that there was nobody else, no other accomplice, no other active shooter, no bomb threat. We saw earlier, you know, the ATF was responding, the FBI aware, Georgia State Police assisting, but the base has its own law enforcement apparatus and criminal investigative body that they will be the lead here, and that's what's going on right now. The suspect was apprehended, unclear in what condition, but they'll be starting to question the suspect. Of course, the investigative process has already kicked in and is underway right now as we're talking, Reed.
Well, and from that Army statement, it sounds like this all happened in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area. That team, highly specialized, highly trained, so no doubt in addition to training for combat, they also are likely highly trained to respond to situations like this, and that training came into play today.
That's exactly right, and medical personnel were dispatched immediately. The 5 soldiers that were shot were on scene before being transported to a local hospital. So hopefully all of them are going to be okay. We are still awaiting more news on the condition of those 5 soldiers who were shot today.
And it's also striking to me that before I got the news business and started to know more about our armed forces and these Army bases and other military bases, that people may not know that thousands of people live on these bases. They live there with their husbands, their wives, their partners, their children go to school on the base. So you can understand why there was such a huge lockdown. People told to lock their doors, to shut their doors, to not go anywhere, because literally there are families there.
That's exactly right, and those schools were on lockdown, so you can imagine all those children in school, probably, you know, they're aware of some situation where they can't leave their classrooms, they can't leave the buildings, so that is a massive disruption and a very scary situation, particularly when there wasn't a lot of information initially about where the suspect was. And there was some confusion, of course, in the chaos. Was there only one suspect? Could there have been a second? So really chaotic scene, but it sounds like law enforcement acted very quickly. The situation appeared to begin at 11:04 a.m. and by 11:35 a.m. the suspect was apprehended. So, you know, that's a relatively, you know, it's not more than an hour, but still for those 25, 30 minutes, that's a very scary half hour to deal with.
The longest of their lives. Anna, we likely will come back to you throughout this hour. We appreciate that insight into what's happening. We have an opportunity, kind of speaking to that quick response. We know the FBI is on scene right now. So joining us live on CBS News 24/7, former FBI official Tim Gallagher. Okay, so we know that the shooter's apprehended. We know that 5 people are in various states of injury on their way to the hospital there. What does the FBI do now?
Sure. Thank you for having me on, Ray. Yeah, the FBI is going lights and sirens, obviously, to Fort Stewart to assist military police and Army Criminal Investigative Command. Immediate task right now is nail down that there wasn't a second shooter, right? Be able to clear the base, just to give the all clear and let people out. And that's not going to be easy because there's just so many people there. It's a military base. And there's going to, not only was there a bad guy with a gun today, but there's good guys with guns there as well. So there's going to be reports. Individuals, I went through this, the Washington Navy Yard shooting, where I saw someone else with a gun, you need to pull the video, run that to ground, and make sure that it was someone we can identify as being a first responder or someone of military personnel. As far as what the FBI is doing, the suspect's in custody, right? So they drilling down on who this individual is, what his motivations may be. Was this a criminal act? Was it personally motivated? Or is this an act of terrorism, right? And the FBI is going to treat this like an act of terrorism, and that they can prove that it is not. And so that's what is going on right now as far as the FBI and working with their partners on the base there.
I want to get your thoughts. It goes without saying you can't just walk on to a U.S. military base of any kind anywhere in the world without some sort of clearance. Does it strike you that this happens sometimes in our country on bases that are secure?
Unfortunately, it does not, right? So it's a secure facility. However, people come and go every day. They have bags, they have badges that get them in. They may not be subject to badge checks. And there's the insider threat. Approximately 1/3 of active shooter incidents involve someone who has a relationship with either the company, the school, the facility. So it could be someone who had lawful access to that facility, maybe had lawful access to a firearm, and decided to act out on this date and with horrific consequences.
Horrific consequences, indeed. Okay, so just for our viewers who may be logging on or tuning in right now, 5 shot at that military base. It sounds like the shooter has been caught. While the focus always should be on the victims, I do have to ask about that shooter. Now what does the FBI do once they get that shooter? What happens to that person as they drill down on the motive?
Yeah, they're going to be, obviously he'll be taken into custody, try and get an interview of him individually right away, find out what he has to say. Sometimes they're looking to talk right away and they want to get a statement from him. But FBI agents, FBI analysts are scraping the internet as we speak, going to get his electronic devices, getting court-ordered search warrants, court-authorized search warrants to search his electronics, look, what he's been searching online, who he's been corresponding with, see if there's anyone else who knew about what he was going to do, and go out and interview those people immediately as well. Interviewing his neighbors on the base, those in his unit, if it's someone who's active duty as well. A lot of people need to be interviewed. A lot of devices need to be scrubbed, but the FBI is putting the picture together as we speak.
Yeah, set your watch, because if my experience holds true, within the next couple of hours you will see residences searched and computers brought out of homes, because like you say, they want to understand. People also trying to understand are at the White House right now. This is from Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt just now on social media, saying the president has been briefed on the shooting at Fort Stewart in Georgia. The White House is monitoring this situation. You know who else is monitoring the situation? The journalists at WTOC. Let's listen into their coverage as they await word outside the hospital where 5 people have been taken.
People being brought here, we will keep everybody updated. Now, we don't know the condition of any of the victims that Fort Stewart or the Army has confirmed. In a typical situation where somebody was injured, whether that be in a wreck, a shooting, or any type of manner, if we have a name, we can generate.
This is has that happened yesterday. I'm gonna try to come back later with an update, but so far I couldn't really find an update for what happened. Let's get back into this.
Confirm that with the hospital that the person is being treated at, and they can confirm the victims, what state they're in, whether they've been injured critically, if they're in stable condition, all of those sorts of things. Because these are soldiers and this is military personnel, the hospital says they don't believe they're going to be able to comment on that, so that information will have to come from the United
Straight
States
from Fort
Army.
Stewart.
So we are going to be pushing to get information on the status of these victims. I have been in contact with representatives from the military the entire time I've been out here. I haven't been able to get an answer yet, but that could just be because the situation is so fluid. Unfortunately, we're becoming increasingly familiar with these situations here in the Savannah area and our extended viewing area, but as we learned with the Oglethorpe Mall shooting or even the Savannah High shooting hoax several years ago, these situations are extremely fluid, and trying to get accurate information about who's involved and what condition they might be in is a little bit difficult in the moment. So as time moves on and we get a little bit more distance from that person being apprehended to now, we are expecting to learn more, and we will be pushing for those answers. Right now, the Army has confirmed that 5 people have been shot. We are expecting at least some of those victims to be here at Memorial Hospital, but be aware that those numbers can change. The victims' conditions can change. It really is a very fluid situation, so we're going to be monitoring that here on WTOC and bring you the very latest updates as we have them.
Shay making a really great point there. The number you saw on the bottom of your screen, that 5 injured just 15 minutes ago, was 4, right? As this information continues to update, we're going to be transparent with you and give you the latest that we can. But let's be mindful that it can continue to change as we're hearing what we're hearing from the folks at Fort Stewart, and they're only giving us the information that they have updated. So there's only that certain levels that this can get to as far as what we can bring to you information-wise. We saw that with the shooting that Shay referenced at the Oglethorpe Mall just a few weeks ago as well, that these situations continue to change as they develop.
Yeah, that's why we call them fluid. Things are changing, numbers are changing, so bear with us if we, are changing numbers and information's coming in. This is just how these things happen, because we're getting information, like you said.
WTOC live coverage out of Savannah. At least 5 soldiers shot there at that military base. Okay, so let's go live now to Pentagon reporter Ellie Watson. You are right there where all of the messaging comes up from various bases from around the world. What are you hearing there, Ellie? All right, so Ellie's having a hard time hearing us right now. Let's go back to Anna check. Okay, you got us, Ellie. Thank you so much. In breaking news situations, this is how it rolls sometimes. We just got to sit down, plug in, and go with the details. So just to bring our viewers up to speed, we know that that base is still on lockdown right now. What is the word there at the Pentagon?
Word is the latest update is the shooter was apprehended. There's no active threat to the community. According to Fort Stewart, the shooter apprehended. 5 soldiers were shot and are being transported to a community hospital. We were told by officials that initial reports are just injured. The casualties are just 5 people injured, but that could change, as the local station was pointing out, as more reports come in. Fort Stewart, I want to give some context, is in eastern Georgia, one of the Army's bases in Georgia. Fort Stewart has about 10,000 people and is the home of the 3rd Infantry Division. This shooting, according to the Fort Stewart Public Affairs, was contained into the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area, which officials tell me is not the full base, but just a section. That active shooter incident was there. The 5 soldiers shot, now taken to the hospital. We should get updates more about the suspect now in custody and the condition of those soldiers as the day goes along.
Well, definitely a tense time there on the base with so many families that team is specialized in, because likely, as we mentioned before, the training that they have to do their job literally had to be put in action there on their own base.
That's right. The 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team, we don't know. I shouldn't jump to conclusions about whether or not those 5 soldiers were part of the Armored Brigade Combat Team, but Fort Stewart is a large training base, so those soldiers would have been able to handle the pressure, handle the tense situation that happened today, but we don't know necessarily whether those 5 soldiers were part of that brigade combat team.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ellie Watson. We appreciate it. We know you have a busy day there ahead at the Pentagon. While we have you, sort of give us an idea of security at any U.S. military base on any given day. Once again, to the point that it's really hard to get onto one of these bases, so that draws a lot of questions.
There is heavy security getting on base. I know bases in the area, when we have to go to Joint Base Andrews or to over near Arlington National Cemetery, there are several gates you have to days in advance, if you don't have a military ID, get your visitor information cleared. And so the fact that this incident was on base, far into the base, is of concern.
Of concern, indeed. And we don't know who the shooter is. We don't know if the shooter had any affiliation there on that base. But what we can surmise is the shooter was able to get, as you put, deep into the base. So what will be the Pentagon response? We just saw the response from the President of the United States via his press secretary, Caroline Leavitt. What happens now at the Pentagon where you're sitting?
The Army Criminal Investigative Division will work with local law enforcement to figure out how the suspect got on base, who the suspect is, provide details, and then also, first and foremost, update us on the condition of the soldiers. We haven't yet heard from the but I expect, like the White House, the Pentagon will confirm that the Secretary has been briefed. We haven't gotten that yet, but that's kind of the next step in this process as the day goes along.
5 injured, shooter apprehended there at a military base. Ellie Watson, thank you so much. Let's go back to live coverage from CBS WTOC on the ground there.
One of the gates is not seeing that much attention at this point, but there still is the military police. Megan, if we could zoom in, we have a military person just posted up with a gun on top of that car. We know the suspect, though, has been arrested, but I think this is all just a precaution at this point. They're just making sure the facility stays secure. We know that 5 people so far have been shot, as you guys have mentioned. We're told that these soldiers were treated on site, then moved to Wynn Army Community Hospital, potentially Memorial Hospital as well.
I still want to know, why did this guy do this?
But what we do know so far, we saw a lot of ambulances coming in and out. There's no open threat to the community at this point, but this is garnering a lot of attention around the base. Pretty much every single street that we've been on so far has had police vehicles and emergency vehicles just speeding by us. But we're going to keep you posted as far as the base goes. We haven't seen that many people coming in or out at this point. I think that's just because the lockdown was just recently lifted, but we'll be sure to check in with you guys the more that we see coming out of the base, coming into the base. But for now, back to you guys.
Our first look there at the gate, of course, like we were talking about, now that the victims, the 2 that we think are going to Memorial Hospital, are going to be driving, it's going to take them a while, just based on how long it took our crews, Madeline right there, to get out to that gate when she was out of here more than an hour ago.
Yeah, and it makes sense. She said no one's going in and out. This just happened. So the lockdown just was lifted about an hour ago. So, this is still fresh. We're not expecting much movement in and out right now. They were telling people to shelter in place, lock their windows, lock their doors while this was unfolding. And here's a map again showing exactly where this all happened. Again, 5 soldiers shot in lockdown. We are still working to confirm their condition.
Why did they do
2 of those soldiers are now being transported as we speak to Memorial Hospital to be treated there in their trauma center. We don't know their conditions. That is a detail that we are working to figure out. Again, here's showing you the distance from Savannah, and this is how long it took our crews to get out there. It's not close to Savannah, so as you can imagine, it took us some time to get those initial photos and those initial videos into our newsroom.
Of course, in that area right there that has a bullseye on it right now, 2ABCT, those aren't just random letters, that's the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area. That's where the folks at Fort Stewart are telling us this shooting happened in particular. When there are so many different areas of the base, that's the one. If you know folks in that 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team, those are the folks most impacted by this, and that's the specific area Fort Stewart officials where this shooting happened. Again, that happened before 11 o'clock. They're telling us the law enforcement was dispatched to that area right there where you see the screen at 10:56 a.m. And this is a live look at the gate that Madeline Bierster is at with our photographer Megan Leroy. You can see that soldier, that military police officer, stationed up, posted up on top of that vehicle, pointing his, what I can assume to be a rifle of some sort, out at the road as folks are potentially approaching that area. We know that lockdown has been lifted, so folks are now able to move around freely past the gates on the other side. You see that gate on the right side of your screen right there. That is the entryway at this portion of Fort Stewart where our crews are set up, and this is a live look at that right now.
Yeah, these are the initial images we're getting into our newsroom right here. First look images of Fort Stewart after this lockdown went into effect just before 11 o'clock this morning. So it's interesting to see, you know, what's going on there now and how many law enforcement are out. Right now we can only see one car with its lights on, military police. You can see it says there on the side. He does have his rifle drawn though. Not sure exactly if that's normal for Fort Stewart or if this is a special procedure that's happening right here, but these are the first images of Fort Stewart coming out after this lockdown went into effect.
And let's repeat why this is happening. If you're just joining us, 5 soldiers have been shot in an active shooter incident in that 2nd Armored Brigade combat team area of Fort Stewart, just beyond the gate you're looking at right now, one of the entry gates to the base. We are told that that suspect, as you see at the bottom of your screen, is in custody, and that allowed the lockdown to be lifted. That was put in place. The lockdown lifted at about 12.
I don't know why did he do this.
This still what you're seeing, what we're seeing with you out in front of one of the gates right now that, as you can see, is closed with those 3 officers kind of in that area, including the one with his rifle drawn over his MP vehicle.
So we are hearing that President Trump has been briefed on this shooting at Fort Stewart. So we just learned that moments ago. His press secretary, Carolyn Levitt, notified via Twitter or X that the president has been briefed on this shooting at Fort Stewart in Georgia, and that the White House is closely monitoring this unfolding situation. Again, this is a fluid situation, so we are getting information right now into our newsroom as we speak, and things are changing, things are moving. We have a statement right here, a new statement. This is from Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr, and he says that as we continue to monitor the situation out of Fort Stewart, that they are asking that all Georgians join them in praying for the victims and our entire military community. We heard a similar statement from Georgia Governor Brian Kemp earlier, as well as Congressman Buddy Carter. So reaction now pouring in, not only from across the state and the region, but also on a national level.
The eyes, apparently, of really the country, certainly the state of Georgia, are here in our area right now, yet again, just a month removed from that shooting at the Overflow Mall, where that was also the case. And just like in our coverage of that shooting that happened, again, at the beginning of July, now this shooting happening at the beginning of August, we'll continue to tell you that this information that we get will continue to develop and change. And all we will try to do is be transparent with you about that information as we get it, tell you where we're getting it from, how our sources are bringing you the latest information and updates, and then continue to tell you when that kind of a detail changes. We saw that happen just moments ago as Shay was telling us she was hearing from folks at Memorial Hospital that the more severely injured victims of the shooting were going to be transported to Memorial, which is a level 1 trauma center, the only in the area, by helicopter. But that changed because of weather. And so now the 2 soldiers who were shot that are headed to Savannah are being brought to Memorial by call. Just an example of how this information can continue to change and how we'll continue to show you that. I want to show you what Shay is looking at over at Memorial Hospital right now. You can see there's an ambulance sitting in the bay.
Listening to WTOC, it's our opportunity to have journalists right there where you are at all times in your community. You are looking live right now at the hospital that is receiving those patients. Once again, at least 5 people injured and a shooter apprehended following an attack at Fort Stewart in Georgia. I want to bring in CBS News correspondent Chanel Call, watching this story and the developments closely. So Chanel, we just heard from those local viewers what's happening there. It sounded like in some of the initial reports that the threat was neutralized, but then you see that sharpshooter right there with his gun aimed right there on the hood of his military vehicle. Are we to assume that that base is just on high alert protection on the outside, and that that gun is pointed just to keep the public out?
Yeah, I mean, look, this looks like terrifying moments at the Fort Stewart Army base. Reed, and still so many questions about exactly how this happened and who is involved here. But the base right now is saying at least 5 of its soldiers were shot. Again, we don't know their conditions at this point, but I can tell you those soldiers were treated on site, and then they were moved to Wynn Army Community Hospital for further treatment. I think we just had that shot up for our viewers before we came to meet. We can also report this hour, Reed, that the active shooter has been apprehended and the lockdown has been lifted on the main part of the base just over an hour and a half after the lockdown was installed. We're also, important to mention, told that there is no current threat to public safety. Let's just remind everybody how this played out and how we got here, right, Reed? Law enforcement was dispatched for a possible shooting. This happened in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area just before 11 o'clock. It happened at 10:56 a.m. This is important to mention because, Reed, this team is known as the Spartans. This brigade is recognized as the Army's most modernized and lethal unit. The Army had advised people who were on the base at that time to stay inside. They put out this message on social media, on Facebook, saying close your doors, lock your windows and doors, before the shooter was apprehended at about 11:35 a.m. Now, by 12:10 p.m., Fort Stewart had lifted the lockdown of the main containment area, but again, the 2nd ABCT complex is still locked down for now. Just moments ago, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has said, look, the president has been briefed on this, and the White House is now closely monitoring the situation. And this will and continue to be a huge investigation, Reed. We're seeing multiple law enforcement agencies now working together on this, including, of course, Georgia State Police, but also the FBI's Atlanta office and the ATF assisting. We also know, Reed, this has had a ripple effect in the community, right? There are 3 elementary schools that are actually on this base. All 3 were in lockdown. I can tell you now those lockdowns have been lifted. The superintendent saying in a statement, there's no immediate threat to schools at this time. And I also want to mention this is such a huge base. It's the biggest east of the Mississippi River with over 10,000 people who live there. That includes not just soldiers, but also family members, Army civilian employees, and it's about 40 miles southwest of Savannah, which is why it took our crews a second to sort of get there and bring us those images. I just want to ask our control room if we have an image of the front door of that military base. I know we've been going to that, which sort of shows the military scene on the ground there. And I was doing some digging here, Reed, just to get some perspective on this. The last mass shooting at a military base was in 2019 at Pensacola, Florida, where 3 people were killed. But again, we know 5 soldiers were shot here today at Fort Stewart Army Base, and we will continue to bring you the latest here on CBS News 24/7.
Chanel Call, thank you so much for that update. Let's go back to Anna Schechter. And Anna, as we think about and project ourselves in that tense moment after the bullets flew, my friend, you've got to think how frustrating it is for these soldiers, because according to WTOC's reporting there in Savannah, they were going to take 2 of the more critically wounded soldiers by helicopter, but then weather mandated that they have to be...
Yeah, it was too much
45
rain.
minutes to
That's
shelter
what it
them.
was.
That has got to be tense.
That's exactly right, but luckily they were in a place where you have trained medical personnel who can initially
Highly trained medical
administer,
personnel.
for example, put on a tourniquet if needed. I mean, these are highly specialized units. I mean, even their fellow soldiers would have been able to step in and help initially stop bleeding and the like. But it sounds to me from our affiliates reporting that at least 2 people are bound for a trauma center for more critical care, and that was delayed. Their transportation was delayed. So yes, very frustrating, of course. And also, we'll see if the suspect was one of their own, was a member of the team or somebody who worked there on the base. As you mentioned earlier, you need to have a security clearance to actually even enter on base. So right now, the suspect is in custody. Investigators, they always want to be able to interview the person immediately, one-on-one, to try to piece together the timeline of exactly what led up, and of course, to rule out if anyone else knew of or supported the attack. I mean, that is kind of the number one immediate goal, because they want to mitigate any other threat. And they also want to interview anyone who might have had any information that this attack was coming. Very important first steps in this investigative process. And of course, all of that information is going to be meticulously gathered and preserved, because this will be part of the story as a case goes forward, eventually as a prosecutor brings a case. So right now, these are very key minutes, hours unfolding right now in the investigative process, Reed.
Well, and Anna, it occurs to me as we try to deduce what the profile of that alleged shooter is, this was somebody who at a minimum was able to get proximity to some highly specialized, highly trained military personnel. You just heard Chanel really characterize them as being elite. Characterize for us
Right. Anybody
in the proximity of them or anybody who would be training with them. They've been in the military for quite some time, no?
For sure. This unit, as Chanel was saying, highly specialized, trained for combat. This is the milieu that we're talking about, and these are also the victims by soldiers who were shot, were a part of this. So potentially the suspect was highly trained and had access to weapons. So we're waiting to hear. Obviously, the investigators now have determined themselves an identification, and they're going to want to go and search, obtain electronic devices. They're going to want to look for other weapons that might have been stockpiled. They're going to want to look for motive, of course. Look for if they were influenced online, if it was a personal grievance. I mean, they're going to chase down everything, and there are so many different investigative avenues that they're going to be going down simultaneously, and that has already kicked in. That is already underway.
Anna Schechter, thank you so much. And of course, our hearts with the families who are attached to those 5 soldiers who have been injured in that shooting. We are watching the hospitals in that area. Journalists on the ground with WTOC pick up the coverage from right outside the hospital.
The victims that we do know about, especially the 2 that, Shay, you learned are en route right now to Savannah, to Memorial Hospital. What are you learning now?
We're still waiting for those 2 victims to arrive here. We do know that it's going to be via ambulance, not helicopter, because of the weather situation. So that's just another added factor here in a situation that nobody wants to confront. Nobody wants to have to deal with, but that is the unfortunate situation that we're seeing here today. So we know that there are at least 2 people en route from Fort Stewart, and keep in mind how long of a drive that is from Fort Stewart into the heart of Savannah to get to the hospital. Obviously, they're in an ambulance. They're going to be able to go faster, have sirens on, so people are going to be moving out of their way. But it is a longer travel time than if they had been arriving here via ambulance. So we are here at Memorial Hospital waiting outside of the ambulance bay where ambulance drop-offs occur. Now, I can tell you that we have also seen several Savannah Police Department officers pulling up to the emergency room over the last couple of minutes. I see at least 2 or 3 at the walk-in entrance, and then there's 1 lone officer's car over by the ambulance bay. We don't know if that is related to the soldiers coming in, but in these high-profile situations, that's not uncommon to have some kind of a police presence to assist and make sure that people's identities aren't revealed, things of that nature. So we are aware that it could be related, but we don't know 100% for sure if that is related. So again, we are expecting 2 soldiers to be transported here. The Army has confirmed that at least 5 people were shot, and so we don't know what the conditions are of those other 3 people. Wishful thinking says that they're able to get their injuries treated at Wynn Army Hospital, but we don't know for sure whether that's the case. And the 2 people that are going to be coming here to Memorial, we can infer that their injuries are going to be on the more severe end, because Memorial is the only level 1 trauma center in our area, and it's the only hospital that is going to be suitable to treat more severe or critical injuries. So we can infer that at least those 2 people are seriously or critically injured. We don't know exactly what their status is right now. If we had their names, which I can tell you we don't at this time, but if we had their names in a typical situation, we could give those names to the hospital and they could at least give us an update on what their condition is, tell us whether they're in stable condition, critical condition, serious condition, what the extent of their injuries are. But because these are soldiers that we're talking about, that information is going to have to come directly from the Army. I can tell you that I have been communicating with the Army since I've been down here on the ground, trying to get more information about the conditions of these soldiers and whether there have been any deaths. The word casualty has been said. Again, just to emphasize, casualty could mean a death, but it could also mean a serious injury. So I am in communication with those officials for the Army, and as soon as I have any information to share, I will. But just keep in mind that this is an extremely fluid situation, and as you can imagine, likely a very chaotic situation. Now that there's no ongoing threat to the public and that the people responsible for this have been apprehended, that gives way for people to start getting their ducks in a row and figuring out what is fact and what is not fact. And we're going to continue to bring you the facts here on WTOC, but keep in mind, because of the fluidity of the situation, that can change. As soon as anybody comes here to the hospital, we will be the first to let you know, but for now I am going to send it back to the studio.
All right, Shay, thanks
All
for
right,
that.
listening in to WTOC coverage. Likely you heard me with my microphone on. I was asking my producer, are we hearing a helicopter there? Because I could have swore I heard one. That would be good news, because as we rewind the tape, we know that two of the soldiers who were shot, the most critically wounded according to reports, were not able to fly by helicopter to that hospital. They have to, because of weather conditions, be taken by an ambulance. But hearing that overhead raises some questions here. So we're all holding our breath to hear the status of those 5 soldiers who were shot and injured there on their Army base in Georgia. And let's put that aside for a moment as we all hold a prayer for those soldiers. And let's talk about the suspect. Let's talk with somebody who knows how these investigations go down, former FBI official Tim Gallagher. Tim, first of all, just want to get your reaction to what you see outside that hospital. It seems like this. Does it strike you that that hospital seems quiet at this point?
Yes, thanks for having me on here. Yes, you want, that first hour is absolutely critical to get the wounded treated, get them, first level care. The good news story here is easier, as I said before. When we're training people how to react to an active shooter, we're like talking about that first aid, that stop the bleed, and that, on a military base, people in that room would have been trained in that. So the initial triage that was handled on site, the initial aid that was given, none better, right? So that's the good news story. You would have liked to have seen it get to the hospital quicker, but as I said, they're receiving treatment along the way.
And that is good to know that training can come into play. But there's also the other story, and that is the investigation into who pulled the trigger and why they would do something like this. In recent mass shootings, even in the Midtown Manhattan mass shooting, very quickly we started to get a profile of that shooter and the allegations that he had mental illness. Because the big question is, when things like this happen, is why didn't somebody see warning signs before? What will happen at the FBI level, at the investigative level, to try to figure out if this person had any warning signs that perhaps were missed?
Right, so as you mentioned, there's a command post that's stood up right now, the FBI, side by side with Army Criminal Investigative Command and State Police. One of the things the FBI is doing is going back into its holdings. What did the FBI know? What have people reported on in the past that has to do with this individual? What are some things that may not be identified with his name that could be him, right? So they're going to go back and see what was out there, and then develop those leads and interview people, figure out what exactly it was that that may have pushed him over the edge. What was what took him from ideation to action, and trying to get evidence as to who knew what and when, and how can they how they could put a criminal case together.
So from the vantage point of the FBI also, you saw some of those live images coming from our affiliate WTOC, and you saw the law enforcement officer with a long gun. We would think that this is a sniper, somebody who's trained as a sniper, still looking through the sights there. We're also hearing about securing that perimeter. We know that the threat has been eliminated. Some people are able in that community to go about their daily activities. but yet you see that long gun and that soldier there with his eyes literally through the sights. Do you think the perimeter is secure when you see a scene like that, or is that just keeping the perimeter secure?
Yeah, they're going to be on high alert, the Army, on the outer perimeter for quite some time, while they work the scene here. You're always afraid, or you're always cognizant of the fact that there could be, a secondary shooter. That doesn't appear to be the case right here. But there's going to be a surge of law enforcement resources, whether that be crime scene processing, victim witness interviewing, and you want to keep that perimeter as secure as possible, because you don't want this to present a target of opportunity for someone else out there who may have an axe to grind, with the U.S. Army.
Tim Gallagher, thank you so much. We'll be talking to you a lot more throughout the day as we learn about the victims and the alleged shooter. Okay, so let's go to the Pentagon and Ellie Watson, who is standing by. Ellie, we're aware that the president has been briefed on this. You had mentioned the last time we talked that you expected we should hear from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Anything there, any developments at the Pentagon?
Not yet. I think the Defense Secretary will likely be briefed today, but we haven't heard an update on that. We're hearing from Army officials who are still working to confirm the extent of the injuries. We know 5 soldiers shot. They were treated on site and then transported to community hospital, and then our local affiliate says some may be going to the Savannah area hospital, indicating their wounds may be.
Maybe they'll have an update later today. Who knows?
Be a tense situation, tense 30 minutes, but the shooter was apprehended within 30 minutes once local law enforcement helped out and.
Well, okay, that's something good.
We will learn more as the day goes along about the severity of the injuries to the 5 soldiers and the identity of the suspect as the Army Criminal Investigative Division looks into this, how the shooter got on base, whether he had access to the base, what the type of weapon was, and the motive.
Well, and all eyes right now are on that Fort Stewart campus there where thousands of people live, but we also are aware that Fort Stewart is one of many military bases all over the United States. What happens when there is an active shooting situation on one military base at other bases around the country?
I think the Army will be on high alert throughout the country just to make sure, as your previous guest noted, that no one who has an axe to grind with the Army tries to take advantage of some of the tension, some of the stress that is coming out of the incident at Fort Stewart today. Fort Stewart says there's no more active threat to the base there, but the Army, the military across the country will continue to monitor to make sure there are no copycats who try and take advantage.
And certainly training and strength of America's military and the military bases right there top of mind for all of us. Ellie Watson at the Pentagon, thank you so much for talking to us once again. Okay, journalists in your communities, and to prove that, our partners at WTOC CBS affiliate in Savannah and their coverage to their locals. Watch.
We're going to check in now with our Shea Schrader, who is live at Memorial Health.
Yes, we are here at Memorial Hospital. We can hear sirens in the distance and have been alerted by Memorial officials that this is likely the soldiers arriving from Wynn Army Base Hospital. Now, we can see a Savannah Police Department officer over here on the corner, likely in place for the arrival, given that these are going to be some high-profile patients coming in here. So we are expecting to see some lights and sirens on an ambulance as it comes through here.
1 second, y'all.
Again,
I'll be right back.
Will be coming from the base. Again, Fort Stewart has confirmed that at least 5 people were shot on the base, and 2 of them are coming here to Memorial in Savannah for treatment. Now, we will continue to remind you that Memorial is the only level 1 trauma center that we have in the area, so it's really the only appropriate center to be treating somebody with a serious or a critical injury, especially the type of injury that you would sustain with a gunshot. Now, again, I can hear sirens coming from, it sounds close to the hospital, coming from the direction of Duran. We are situated at the ER here at Memorial Health. We were expecting originally today that patients be brought here by a helicopter and that they would be landing on the helipad, just given the severity of the situation and the nature of the injuries that we're expecting these folks to have. But because of the weather, they were forced to bring here to Memorial by ambulance. Now, again, we have been hearing sirens and can see officers from the Savannah Police Department getting out and monitoring the situation as you would do with, high-profile patients and things like that to protect their identities, the nature of those injuries and things. So we are going to continue to keep you updated. I'm not hearing the sirens anymore. Officials from Memorial had said that they thought that could be the patients. It may be somebody else, but we will be sure to bring you right back here just as soon as we have eyes on an ambulance, and we will let you know when those patients get here. For now, I'll send it back to the studio.
All right, thanks so much, Shay, for the very latest information. As Shay mentioned that
Listening to coverage from WTOC in Savannah as we await the arrival of soldiers for treatment there at that hospital. CBS News 24/7 with continuing coverage of the attack at Fort Stewart in Georgia when we come back.
They still ain't told us why he did it. Tell us something.
What happens when you get conversation over conflict?
I think they taught me to have grace and compassion.
Speed us up.
The human side of the
Let me
headline.
speed us up. Speed us up.
It was almost like being face to face with the devil.
48 hours reports.
Speed us up. There we go.
Of that military base. Watching this closely, CBS News correspondent Chanel calls. Chanel, we're hearing from WTOC and our reporter there that sirens are now in the distance. It sounds like two of the most critically wounded soldiers are about to arrive at the hospital.
Yeah, there was a bit of a delay getting them there. That's because they couldn't be transferred via a helicopter due to some weather concerns on the ground. So they were being sent there through an ambulance, and we're hearing again they are set to arrive there shortly, but there was unfortunately a delay. I also want to mention, Reed, we do have some new video from Citizens app inside Fort Stewart where we can apparently see the soldiers walking through. This will be the first time I'm also seeing this video. Take a look and just see what this looked like for them inside the base as these obviously chaotic moments were playing out when they found out they were in lockdown. So again, a short 10-second video here just showing a little bit of what it was like inside the base during that moment in time. Let's just again remind our viewers how we got here, how this all played out. We know law enforcement was dispatched for a possible shooting. This happened in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area just before 11 a.m. at 10:56 this morning. This is important to know. We were talking about this last time, Reed, because this team is known as the Spartans. This brigade, it's recognized as the Army's most modernized and lethal unit. The Army had advised people that were on the base to stay inside, to close and to lock their doors and the windows before the shooter was apprehended at 11:35 a.m. Now, during that time, that's when the Army says 5 soldiers were shot. Again, we do not know their conditions at this point, but we do know that 2 of them are being transferred to Memorial Hospital. And again, because the helicopter couldn't fly due to bad weather, they are being sent there via an ambulance, and there was a bit of a delay there. By 12:10 p.m., we know that the active shooter was apprehended, and the Fort Stewart base had lifted the lockdown on this main containment area, but the second ABCT complex, that is still locked down for now. We are, though, told there is no current threat to public safety, and this is important because there is such a large community out there. We're also seeing a huge federal response to this incident, right? The White House had just sent out a message on social media through Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt in the last hour saying the president has been briefed and the White House is now closely monitoring the situation. We're also seeing multiple law enforcement agencies coming together and working together on this investigation, including, of course, Georgia State Police, but also the FBI's Atlanta office, Reed, and the ATF. They are also assisting here. I do want to talk about where this happened and just how this impacted the community, because there are 3 elementary schools that are on this base. They were all in lockdown during that hour and a half of chaos. Those lockdowns have now been lifted, but this is a huge base read. It's the biggest east of the Mississippi River. There are over 10,000 people who live there. That includes not just soldiers, but we're also talking about family members and Army civilian employees who live there. Just as a locator, I can tell you it's about 40 miles southwest of Savannah, which is why it took a couple of moments for our local crews to actually get there and get you video on the ground. We've since seen some of those images, you know, the military police cars outside the base. The last mass shooting at a military base like this one was back in 2019, Reed, at Pensacola, Florida, and 3 people there were killed. At this point, again, we know 5 people were at least injured in the situation that played out at Fort Stewart today. We are still waiting to get some updates on their conditions. 2 of them, we are being told, are almost at Memorial Hospital now.
I'm gonna go ahead and pause that for a second because they just did an update, and this here was CBS News. Let me find the Associated Press. Give me 1 second, y'all. Find the Associated Press. Here we go. Here's the AP. This here is the it's the AP given an update as of 3 hours ago. It's supposed to be talking here in a minute. Hold on. Let me speed this up.
Today's events.
There we go.
The Army will provide some brief comments and take a few questions. This engagement is on the record, and we will have 15 minutes set aside. A couple of reminders: we will not release any of the names of our injured soldiers at this time. However, we will be able to provide you a status update on their general condition. We will not speculate on the assailant's motives or the circumstances that led to yesterday's events. We'd rather refer those questions to CID, as this is an ongoing investigation. When you ask your questions, we ask that you give your name and affiliation and speak up so that we can hear you and you can hear us. I'd like to introduce the Army, the Honorable Dan Driscoll. His name is spelled D-A-N, last name Driscoll, D-R-I-S-C-O-L-L. The commanding general
make sure my mic gets charged.
Also available is the deputy.
Oh, come on.
EBTINO and Special Agent in Charge Ryan O'Connor, RYANO_CONNOR. They will be ready to speak to you with regarding the shooting that occurred here yesterday at Fort Stewart. Now pause and I'll turn it over.
I don't know who the audio person is, but they cannot focus a camera worth a damn. Again, this is the Associated Press giving an update on the shooting at Fort Stewart.
First off, to support the victims and their families and the community that experienced the shooting tragedy yesterday. And the second one was to recognize the heroism, the courage, and the selfless service of 6 soldiers who put themselves in harm's way yesterday to take care of their fellow soldiers. I want to start off by saying we're standing at the brigade headquarters of the unit that had the shooting yesterday. And this morning, if you were here, what you would have seen is you would have seen a lot of soldiers out doing physical training and PT. That is incredibly important to us because we are highlighting the resilience of the American soldier. We are showing their strength and their courage under fire. They are going to spend the remainder of the day able to meet with counselors, but also getting back to their jobs, serving the American people. We spent this morning, General Lucas and I, visiting some of our soldiers who were in the hospital and meeting with their families. We talked to doctors, and one of the things that I can say unequivocally is that the fast action of these soldiers under stress and under trauma and under fire absolutely saved lives from being lost. On behalf of President Trump, Vice President Vance, and Secretary Hegseth, they wanted me to tell these soldiers, their family, and this community that the entire federal government stands by and stands ready to take care of these soldiers and their family. One of the more important things we were able to do this morning was to recognize the heroism of these 6 soldiers. One of the soldiers, they were unarmed and ran at and tackled an armed person they know knew was actively shooting their buddies, their colleagues, their fellow soldiers. Another soldier jumped on top of the person to subdue them until federal law enforcement was able to arrive. The other soldiers immediately, using their training that they had developed over years and years, started to take care of mass casualties. The hospital they took them to in March had just run a mass casualty exercise for a moment just like this. The Army does not want these moments to happen, but it stands ready when necessary to act and care for those when it does. The Army this year is 250 years old. It is 1 year older than this nation itself. These American soldiers highlight exactly what the Army has meant to this country. It has been there in some of the most traumatic moments of this nation's history, and it has been resilient, stood strong, and acted on behalf of American citizens. I just want to thank this community. It is absolutely unbelievable to me the speed with which law enforcement officers showed up, paramedics showed up. We had so many people showing up within the first hour that we actually had to stage some of them away. We are so grateful for this community and all that it does for our soldiers and their families. The investigation is ongoing. I imagine a lot of the questions we'll take will be related.
Why does it keep freezing? Because my Wi-Fi is good. It's gotta be down.
So let's kick off with some questions. as I just remarked to your colleague, we are still early in the investigation. The shooting happened yesterday. CID, I can have them come up and tell you what we learned so far. Our commitment is what we learn, what we disclose, and we'll be transparent. Justice will be brought on behalf of the victims in the community that was harmed. Good morning. As the Secretary mentioned, this is still an active investigation. We're still processing the scene with all the resources and capabilities that the Army Criminal Investigation Division has to offer, which is immense. We search people in light of the fact that we're still processing. I'm going to have to defer that question. No, that would be a violation. You're right.
They should have got better mics, I swear. I swear they should have got better microphones.
Ryan, it was heartbreaking sitting in there and seeing their soldier, their daughter sitting behind them, struggling. Our hearts were with them. We tried to hug them. We tried to convey to the president and the vice president and the secretary of defense that our entire nation works with them. We stand behind them. It has been only a couple of hours for them. I think they are still processing through it. But what we wanted to convey is we will be here with them every single step of the way. The United States Army is committing every resource to get these soldiers back into their formations as quickly as we possibly can. And then one of the things that we had said at the meeting earlier with the soldiers is General, we were reflecting on this in the car ride. These kind of moments, especially if you deploy, you've got to see them more frequently. The trauma from them often doesn't hit for weeks or months on it. It doesn't come as quickly as you might think. And so what we try to encourage for all of our soldiers is to speak up, lean on each other, lean on your leadership, and we will provide the resources, the care, and the love that they need to recover. Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. It's heartbreaking. It's painful to see them struggling with a family member. They expressed that they were incredibly proud of their soldiers, as we are. And they asked for prayers, so we appreciate all the prayers that have been sent our way. We would ask them to keep coming. Yes, sir. Thank you. Of the 5 wounded soldiers, 3 were released yesterday, which is amazing considering the circumstances, the range in which they were engaged. 1 soldier remains with an inpatient here at Wynn Army, right here on Fort Stewart. She's doing very well, high spirits. Of course, she's got a little bit of a road to recovery. We're hopeful she may be released as early as this weekend, but that will just depend on how she was over the next couple days. And we have 1 soldier that remains at Savannah Memorial Community Hospital, as I visited with the secretary this morning. She's got a little bit longer road to recovery. The doctors are very positive that they think it's going to take her a bit longer to recover, but they're very hopeful she's going to make it. Yeah, I think we trained for this on the battlefield, and it's a different situation when it happens on a facility with one of your own. So I think over the upcoming days and weeks, and we know we've got to keep a very close eye on them, wrap our arms around them. We've got a great community here and a great response. We saw from all the folks the secretary recognized this morning. The support from the local community just amazing. So we feel that this demonstrates that we trained internally for the worst case scenario. Doctors or medics and our soldiers respond exactly as we were trained to do. Now our job is to make sure that and I just want to recognize behind me in the ring, these are the 6 soldiers we were able to recognize today.
sucks.
Suspect is currently in custody, and we're working through the military uniform code military justice process at this time.
Okay, so this guy was a soldier. Did he have a psychotic break, or why did he do it?
Certainly a tragic scene where our soldiers trained, but the process of the scene would normally encompass digital evidence, forensic evidence, trace evidence, all of those things, which our team is currently doing. Can't comment on that at this moment. Because we are one day into the investigation, we can't reveal those kinds of things. I think what we try not to do is speculate or use
Say,
speculation. So,
tell us something.
each instance, we take very seriously something like a DUI or another issue that could occur in the community that impacts how we treat that soldier in our formation.
So y'all still don't know anything.
Powerful and controlled and competent soldiers. So we are constantly reflecting on our mechanism. It varies based off the case. Yeah. Yeah, sure. I think, as the secretary mentioned, we have 6 incredible soldiers behind us, but this is just representative of the larger formation. Once the shooter was identified and the threat was identified, we had soldiers that immediately raced, tackled that soldier, wrestled the gun away to the second non-commissioned officer jumped on top of the photo stranger until the police could arrive. And then simultaneously, no one hesitated once the soldiers gone.
Okay, they really ain't tell us nothing. I thought they would told us a little bit more than what they're able to tell us. But thing is, the 5 people who were shot, then none of them died. Suspect is in custody. He was subdued by by his fellow soldiers. Unfortunately, we don't know whether or not yet if this guy planned this. Did he have a psychotic break, or what happened yet? But I'll try my best to update y'all on this situation. Peace.